There are some new people that I see in here now that I probably don't know, so I'll introduce myself anyways. My name is Andrew Coleman, and I'm one of the co-creators of the Flow Leadership Framework, and have been working with this now for 26 years and have a little bit of experience in this area. So I'm really happy that you are all able to be with us today. Again, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll pick them up there and answer them as we go. And we'll end at 45 at 1:45 or 15 minutes before the next hour. And but for people that want to stay after or maybe have some additional questions or comments, we might hang out a little bit longer for you. But for the main part, we'll do this in the next 40 minutes now. Hans, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So my name is Hans Gillior, and I am in Stockholm, Sweden. So in the very northern part of Europe. No snow so far, but it's going to be probably a cold winter. I've been working with IT and agile transformation for almost 20 years in different positions, mainly as consultant, but also as a line manager in a large organization. And I'm a proud owner of a Flow certified coach certificate. So I've been working with Flow for a couple of years now. So it's been a very interesting journey to be part of. So shall we start?
Yes. There you go.
So let me first of all introduce Flow a little bit. It's a leadership framework, and the main purpose of it is actually to improve business performance from both individual teams, products, and organizational perspectives. And even though it can be explained quite simply what it actually is, aligning people and making them have fun doing that, it is also a very complex framework in the background, including 18 different principles or tiles that have been developed over a time of 50 years. And those tiles are actually analyzing or viewing the organization from different perspectives, horizontally, vertically, and showing how actually the organization works and where the main problem areas of frictions in the organization is. If we combine these two, the simplicity of it and these tiles, we get the middle picture, which is a number of tools and frameworks that actually constitute the whole Flow framework in a good way. And since it is simple but also so powerful, it scales very nicely and it enables organizations to transform. It removes the friction for transformation and also for collaboration and performance. And it guides, it's a sort of a guidance for the whole entire organization. We come back a little bit about the different case studies that we have, but we can say roughly that around 1,000 people have been trained certified worldwide using Flow, and they use it in the daily work so far with incredible improvements or business performance. So what is the business challenge that we're trying to address using Flow? What we can see when we look at organizations out there is that the majority of companies or organizations run their business with around 50 to 70% level of friction. And this is on the lower side, I would say, because we see enormous amount of problem of companies and leaders working in an environment that where there's a lot of waste in using resources and energy in the organization. And these are the main obstacles when it comes to driving change, transformation, performance, and collaboration. For example, if you want to implement scaled agile frameworks, something like that requires that organization has an ability to change and transform. And that is often hindered by a high level of friction in the organization. So before actually doing that, it's important to actually remove the friction to allow change to happen. And what we can say primarily when we look at these companies and organizations is that successful companies that actually are driving this agile transformation are successful in doing that. They are also very successful in identifying, controlling, and eliminating friction continuously. This is not a one-time thing. This is something that they do continuously, iterative, every 3 months to actually build the right environment and climate for change and transformation. Without that, it is most likely to be a failure. And the question we get when we talk about flow and started to describe this this prerequisite is where to start, how to get commitment and prioritize. And that is what we're trying to talk about tonight.
And by the way, it helps if I unmute. I got a question in the background here about, do we have some examples of the 50 to 70% levels of friction? And actually, as we go through the presentation, we'll actually be sharing an example, pretty typical example of an organization that had quite a bit of friction when they started. And I think it was closer to the 70% level. So, but good question. Keep them coming.
Yeah. Anyway, so if we look at flow as a methodology, which is very agnostic, it has a mission statement, what we're trying to achieve when doing flow. And that is create sustainable high performance for individual teams, products, and organizations. And that is really what we're trying to achieve with implementing the flow principles or the tiles in the organization itself. By doing this, we can actually reduce friction in the organization quite substantially, and that is a prerequisite for actually boosting the value creation and transformation in the organization, which is in turn needed for business growth. So we can say that flow is actually the starting point for business growth and business performance in many ways. So flow actually started approximately 50 years ago and developed as a part of an academic research, and actually been developing since then, both academically and also with hands-on experience doing many projects in this area, learning from that experience. Today, we have approximately 25 customer cases showing concrete benefits and how actually the flow was used to boost that business growth. What we can say is that flow is actually a combination of mentoring, coaching, and training. So mentoring comes to coaching as CXOs to have the right vision, understanding of how to make people awesome and how to align people in that organization, training people to get sustainable high performance, coaching in the right way, and actually using the right products for right engagement for that way. So it's the three areas that we combine when actually implementing flow. And if we take one away, it doesn't really give the same results. So all the three of them are mainly prerequisite for achieving those benefits or business performance.
Yeah, and there's a question again in the background, is friction as a measure or a metric, and the definitions of that. I think that's actually the next slide. Good question.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much.
I think I'll just leave my mic on and try to be quiet.
Yeah. Anyway, so what is this all about then? If you look at business effectiveness, I think that is where we started, how to actually measure that and what does actually mean. So our definition of business effectiveness is actually how much resources is needed to achieve a business goal. So a business goal is a combination of the vision, ambition, and objectives that an organization has and that they try to achieve. And they do that by utilizing resources, and that can be employees, cost, processes, tools, anything they need, capabilities they need to actually achieve that goal. And we can say that if you have a higher level of resources to reach your goal, then you have low business effectiveness. But if you have lower business resources to reach the same goal, then the effectiveness will go up. So that's a little bit how that equation works. But there's another component here as well that we need to take into consideration, and that is the friction area, and that is to the right. And that is something that we measure with our flow maturity assessments. So that is very much a function of the friction in the organization. So the higher friction we have in the organization, the more business resources are needed to achieve that business goal. And we can see also in that in some organization where they have sort of 50% friction in organization, meaning that they need really 2 resources for each person's job to get the work done and get the goal achieved. But friction is something that's natural, and I think it's something that is in all organizations, and it actually grows with time and with complexity. So the more complexity in the organization that you have, the more friction naturally exists there, and it's important to every once in a while eliminate the friction to actually get down the complexity and have more performance. And it comes in all types of forms. You have in product areas, you have in product program friction, you have portfolio friction, organization, governance, knowledge, information, innovation, structure, and leadership. All of these are different kinds of frictions that needs to be eliminated in order for the business effectiveness to increase, which is important for many organizations. So that is a little bit how we define this business effectiveness and setting the flow in that context, that our goal with flow is actually to reduce or eliminate the friction so that you can reach your goal with adequate business resources and hence improving the business effectiveness. So we have a number of case studies where we actually looked at this and see what increase in flow maturity or reduced friction actually does to business performance. Generally speaking, based on 20+ case studies, we see that by increasing flow maturity 40 to 50%, the average business performance increased by over 200%, which is quite remarkable. So there's a clear correlation between the flow maturity that we can measure and work with, the level of friction organization, and the business performance, as we can see on the diagram. There are a few examples here that we have highlighted, and all of this can be read about in the flow book, the literature. The ZF example is quite remarkable. Here they improved the flow maturity in 2 agile teams, and by doing that, they increased performance by over 400% and did a saving of $24 million, which is quite a lot. But we can see the same trend also with other companies, the AI company and Nature Publishing Group, and also Ericsson and Skanska here, that they are receiving remarkable business performance increases with increased flow maturity by reducing the friction in the organization. So this is something that we constantly monitor and see how the relationship between flow and business performance actually turn out. Our key learnings about doing this and implementing flow is actually to start small, build trust in the organization, and also build momentum, getting leadership on board and have patience. Implementing flow and getting this kind of effects is a long-term thing. It's something that is not done in 2 months or 3 months, but rather a year. And it requires a lot of commitment from leadership to get this kind of results. So it's nothing that is done, by trial, just to try to get something going in a week or so. And if we look at what we have learned also, is that the approach for the first 3 to 6 months is actually to identify, eliminate friction in teams and product units, identify a couple of teams to start working with, clarify vision objectives, cascading that in an organization, and training and coaching, a lot of coaching and mentoring all the time to actually get people involved and understanding that their role is a little bit different when it comes to actually raising performance and getting collaboration to work. So what do we actually do concretely? So the flow leadership framework has been translated into a number of tools, what we call the flow leadership toolbox. And these are practical tools that are used to improve business performance. On this page, we see three tools that I have used quite a lot to identify friction in the organization on different levels, and also how to start actually eliminating, where to start. It is also a tool to help organization prioritize where they should start to eliminate friction itself. So the first one is flow maturity assessment. And this is something that we referred to in the previous slide and in the graph, where we measure the flow maturity in the organization. And this is something that we do with surveys, dialogues, interviews, workshops, to actually identify how the current friction position, how does it look like today? What is the situation today when it comes to flow and friction in the organization? And here you can see that we get 24 different areas we look into, that we analyze. We see the traffic light system there with the heat map. And based on this, we can identify areas that needs to be prioritized to work with, to eliminate the friction. And this is something that's done iterative every 3 months or 6 months to identify. So how does it look like now? Where do we need to work? Where do we need to focus to reduce friction? The last model is very similar. This is a friction flow analysis, and it's more related to individual teams, product itself, or an organization. And this is actually based on one of the key principles of flow, which is vision, people, and 4D equals flow. And this is something that we analyze. This is one of the main sources of friction in the organization, or when it comes to teams itself. And this is also a heat map where we can actually calculate the level of friction in that organization, the level of flow, and actually identify areas of improvements. And we can also discuss what are the consequences having the current levels and so on. This is also done by surveys or interviews, workshops, and so on, to get the right picture of how it actually works. The second one here, called the Power of One, is a tool to actually identify what is important in an organization. What is the activities that have highest impact on reaching the vision and goals of the organizations? What do we need to do concretely to improve business performance in where we are now today? In this case, we break down the vision and objectives into challenges. So each objective has a challenge that needs to be investigated. What are the most critical challenges that we have to reach the vision of business performance? And also we have solutions to the challenges. What solutions and activities do we need to do to actually mitigate the challenges that we have today in reaching the performance? And what we can do here is actually calculate a percentage in importance of how well an activity or a solution contributes to the overall vision. Where do we need to focus? Where's our best bets on how to improve business performance? What we see today is that when we do this kind of exercises and break the vision down in this way, that 30% of the solutions and activities that the organization do today have no impact on the overall vision and business performance, no whatsoever. So that is pure waste that we try to eliminate, and saying that by doing this way and identifying the sort of the best solutions to improve performance, all money goes into that direction and are used in the best way. We have other tools as well, the value stream mapping. I will go into that a little bit further in this presentation. We do flow stress tests where we actually test out different scenarios in organizations, see where we can find bottlenecks, friction in that organization, and actually removing that to improve performance. So this is more hands-on, concrete scenarios that we use that are triggered in the organization, see where that scenario is running and how it is running. And then also we have the leadership competence framework or workshop, where we identify the right leadership capabilities actually for a high performing organization. What characteristics or leadership capabilities are needed for this organization, and what is not needed for the organization. And that's a really interesting exercise to actually pinpoint the right behavior in this organization when it comes to leadership. So I promise that we will go through a couple of examples, and this is one of the examples that I really want to highlight. This is a world-renowned media company, and they were struggling with their business performance. So in the start of this journey, they had a problem with the velocity of the organization. They actually delivered, they had 58 deliveries per year with 15 teams, and they had a very high level of friction, as you can see to the left. I think they had a maturity of around 20-30%, which would indicate there's probably around 50-60% friction in that organization. A lot of red areas. And especially here, we can see there's a problem with having common visions, the common language, how they deliver the value and so on. Problem with the governance, a lot of challenges all over the place that needed to be managed and addressed and removed in some way. So over a year or 2 years, each of these areas was actually addressed and mitigated. And to the right, you can see the end results where the level of maturity actually increased by 52% and eliminated almost 40-50% of friction in the organization, which has a huge impact on business performance. So after that, they delivered actually 125 deliveries a year with the same team. They removed the backlog of 4 or 5 years of work, and they saved over $18 million by doing this work, which is quite an amazing journey. So we can see that by doing an analysis, identifying areas of friction, problem areas, addressing those in the right way in the teams, individuals, products, and with leadership, we can actually get huge increases in business performance. Yes, we talked about this before, where we actually started to break down. This is the Power of One tool that we use quite a lot. And this is actually prioritizing, where do I invest, or what do I do actually to improve business performance or IT performance as such. And I told a little bit about the tool itself. This is something we use quite a lot to identify what is the key challenges company has to actually to perform in a way that is expected. So we have objectives, challenges, and solutions that we look at. What we often see when doing this kind of exercises or looking at organizations generally is that they are very good at identifying objectives. We have the goal of reducing cost by 10%, or we have the objective of improving velocity by 10% or reducing risk or whatever. Those are quite easy to state. And then we see that they mostly go down to solution or even to activities, saying that, well, you should do this and you should do that to actually achieve the objectives. What they miss is that there's a link, it needs to be a linkage between the objective, challenges, solution, and activities. And many forget that or don't do the challenges layer, meaning that there's a disconnect, and meaning also that the solutions that we actually focus on have no relationship or linkage to the actual objectives that they're trying to solve. This is a great way also for a leadership team to have the same view about what they're trying to achieve and why, and the prioritization. We also see that this is a tool that actually changes quite rapidly, also very agile in its methodology. So when we start investing in one area, the dynamics of the tree changes. So this is something which we recommend doing every 3 months to see actually where to focus and where to invest to get the best possible outcome. What we do here is that we calculate how the different value streams or value lines here in the organization to see actually where is the how value travels from a solution up to objectives and vision, and based on that we can measure and ensure that path is taken.
We have a good question here from
Yeah.
Joachim. Thanks. This is done in a workshop format. And so, yeah, keep going, Hans.
Yes, this is actually done in a workshop format with the leadership team. It could be, I mean, 2 or 3 people up to 7 people, to actually get the same picture of how the organization itself with the objectives and challenges. I did this actually with a construction company just a few months ago with a leadership team. I think there were 5 or 6 of them. And we actually had a discussion for almost 2 hours setting the top layer about what is the vision and what are the objectives and how important are they. And that was needed because they had different ideas and different perspective of what the objectives actually were in the organization. And what we do here is actually we put percentages here. I don't think you can see it that well, but we're trying to understand what node is actually more important than the others, putting them in sort of a relationship to each other. So in this case, the node to the right here, the IT business agility, was seen as more important than the other 2. So in every time we actually break down a node into challenges or into solution, we set these percentages to actually ask which one of these are more important than the other. And that is a subjective discussion, obviously, but it actually sets priority in the organization and helps us to get these percentages in the bottom to show what areas are actually contributing mostly to the overall vision.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, this is customized every time. And so there's a lot of homework going into setting one of these workshops up. So we've got 14 minutes left, so I want to keep this rolling. And
was there another question?
No, that was, let's say, who settles the differences of opinion on what the objectives are? Chief product owner, otherwise known as CEO. Or CIO.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good question because there will be disagreements. And in the end, I, as a facilitator, try to help them come to an agreement, which can be difficult. But I think it's really important that they come to agreement. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to continue the discussion.
Right. If you can't distill the agreement, you're going to get friction in politics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great questions. Keep them coming. And this is really the heart and soul of what we wanted to get to tonight, this slide here. And take it away, Hans.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. So one thing that we use Flow for is actually to analyze the value stream in organizations. And value streams is something that's very important nowadays and something that is talked very much about. So what we want to do here is actually trying to understand the level of friction in the organization and the level of value flow in the organization, so to say. So what we do is that we analyze all the intersections in the company. So we have 2 different roles, and that is a service provider and service receiver. So in an intersection, there's a service provider who is actually developing services and providing services to the service receiver who actually uses or consumes that services. So we define value here as the service provider's ability to meet and address or exceed the service receiver's expectations. So we map the expectations in all the different intersections, and based on how those expectations are met, we can actually score 1 through 7 how well that actually works. In this case, we have a number of intersections here. This is on a little higher level. And obviously, each of these boxes consists of many different units. But we have a number of areas that are interacting, and we can actually look at or graphically display how well value flows between them, and where is the value shortage, and where is the value surplus in this relationship. So for example, between the domain of the CA office and IT operation, there are problems. The expectations of IT operations are not met. The help and support they need to do an excellent job is not met by the domain of the CA office. Therefore, it's a red score 2.3. And that is obviously something we need to address. Why is it red? What areas do we need to improve? How can we improve flow in that relationship? While other areas, for example, between the domain of the CA office and the IT business relationship area, that is working very well. The IT business relationship people are getting the right support and the right value from the domain of the CA office to do an excellent job, to improve their business performance. And what we can do is actually learn from each other. What can we learn from the business, that relationship, into the other areas? And this gives a very interesting dashboard that we actually can work with and actually display on a higher level to the CEO or even to the CEO to say that this is how it actually works in the organization. This is how value flows in the organization. These are the frictions that you need to work with. And we can actually calculate how well value is actually flowing through the organization in a good way. Yeah. When we did this with a large bank here in the Nordics, we actually received a 25 increase in value creation with the reduction of IT cost of 3%. Yeah. So we worked actively with this methodology, and it actually improved the value creation enormously. Yeah. And what was interesting here also is it actually changed the culture here between IT and business, from being this blame game culture to actually having a common basis of a common objective of improving business performance, which was excellent.
Yeah. Remember, this is at the portfolio level. We have a question here. What are the limitations, caveats you've experienced, learned by numerically capturing value? And I think part of the observation is the numbers are somewhat subjective because it's based on the expectations of the receiver.
Yes. So they are subjective, but they give a very truthful indication of how that relationship is working and the level of friction in there.
And this dashboard, by the way, whoops, I'm not sure which way to point, but anyways, this dashboard is customized for each customer. Yes, and so this also requires quite a bit of work to set up so that it works and so that the numbers are agreed to and everybody is on the same page. So yeah, but there are things that you have to watch out for when doing this. By the way, in the way of a commercial, we're going to do a deep dive on this particular slide, and we're going to show everything behind it in another webinar in about a month. That was originally intended for today, but then we realized, well, we better introduce it first. And so we'll be reaching out to everybody in the next couple of weeks to let them know when the next webinar is going to be. And we're going to show everything that's behind this slide right here, so you can get a better feel. It will answer the questions that basically Chris was asking. What are the limitations? What are the caveats? What are the landmines that you're going to step on and watch everything blow up? So, but this was used for 5 years by the bank, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. We've only got 7 minutes left. Many of you got this picture. By the way, the slides in tonight's recording will be available for everybody. And so you can always dive into these numbers later. What we wanted to do, we've done the case studies. They're in the book, Flow. There are 14 case studies in here. The ZF and the AI and the global construction case studies aren't in the book. It's just the MPG case study is one of the 14. And in the book, by the way, we include 2 case studies where everything went up in flames, just so that we keep it real, so that you can, yeah, keep it real and make sure that people know that this doesn't always work. All right. I see that there was a question here. What are the inputs you need to be able to prepare this slide for a company? So I'm assuming it was the previous slide here. And that's really what the next session is about, everything that's included and how to structure it, how to set it up, who you have to have with to make this work. Remember, this is portfolio level. It's not down at the team level. This is with the leadership teams. Okay. By the way, back to this slide on the mini cases here, the main thing that I wanted to point out on these 4 mini cases were we decided recently to start trying to speak more the language of a CFO. And basically what you've got here is we took everything that we could think of in the way of costs and put it into the assignment. And then we looked at the return that they got after having gone through everything. And we tried to do a return on investment. These numbers aren't perfect, but they give you a directional feel for the type of return that they're going to get. And this one was achieved in just over 12 months for the ZF case. For NPG, that one, again, that took 2.5 years, and we put in all the costs that we could think of for the teams and the leadership teams and the teams that were involved in that. And the cost was about $7.5 million, and they got back way over 18. And they got the payback in 7.4 months after the completion of the program. So it was a 242% return on investment. For the AI teams, this was like, I think, 12 months. And for having a couple extra flow certified trainers on staff for that time, plus some of the other team members that were with and the support staff, the return that they got was about 14, and this is 14 million crowns, so Swedish crowns, but their payback was around 343%. And as Hans mentioned with the construction company, just on one of the exercises that they did, they got a 50% reduction in planning lead time. And for anybody who's worked in construction, that's significant. So again, you'll get a copy of these. I know I'm going fast, but I want to be able to bring us into the end. These are some of the customers that we've worked with here during the past 25, well, actually almost 30 years. And these are the business benefits that have been delivered by the teams. We didn't do this by ourselves. Performance increases, savings, revenues increases. One of the projects was even audited by a Fortune 500 finance department. So these aren't just numbers we pulled out of the air. These are real numbers. And so just the first year on that one, it was the finance team there said, oh, that was a $29.6 million savings net. That's as if we had increased sales by 300 million for that multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 company. So we've carefully tracked these numbers now down through the years. And so now we're to the point where we're going to start putting a guarantee on the table. And if the client agrees to fully participate in our program, and that includes training everybody from the board to the executives, to the leadership, to the team level, if they participate and let us do the training, coaching, and mentoring via Flow, we know that we'll at least double what they're getting back. But it requires that they actually participate. And as I mentioned, the ROIs and the results and the performance increases and all those cool things are all on the previous slides. So we've got about 2 minutes left. You can go ahead and drop questions into the chat, or just if you want, you can take off your microphone and go ahead and ask a question. I think I'll stop sharing right now. And yeah, we're a small enough group right now that if you just want to go ahead and fire away, ask questions, or if you've got comments, feel free. We'll end the official part at 1:45. Stunned silence. I love it. Let's see. We got comments here, by the way, Hans. Everything from thanks to nice to thanks for both the insights, very interesting, and so on. And it's always fun to be able to walk through people who haven't really seen what we've been doing so that they get to see it for the first time. By the way, we forgot to mention it, but there's going to be training for the professional services as well. And Hans is working on that right now. And so I don't know that we'll necessarily do a certification in that because we already have the other certifications, but it will be training will be available in this. And by the way, we can do this virtually. We can use Mural or Mira or whatever. Oh, great question, Steve. Thanks. How hard is it to sell this to companies? Yeah. This isn't an easy sale. Typically what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll do the training portion. And then we like to follow up with the coaching and mentoring right away with the teams. And sometimes that works perfectly. That's exactly what we did at ZF. And so this isn't an easy sale, but what we've noticed is when we're working with the company already and we have teams on site and in place, as the people are using this and they're starting to see the results, then the leadership in the organization, they start sniffing around and they're going, what's going on here? This is interesting. And so it sort of organically grows. So it's not an easy sale in the beginning, but yeah, Hans, you were going to share.
Yeah, what we have done is actually package these services into one-day workshop.
Yeah.
Where we do, for example, the flow maturity assessment with surveys beforehand and analysis, and I have a day work with a leadership team or a management group, and that works quite well as a starting point to actually build the commitment or building an engagement with the customer. So that's what we do. We try to make also small offerings that actually can get us into the organization, and those are much easier to sell. Having a predefined service that can be done, like a workshop one day.
Yeah, because it's pretty quick. We can customize the surveys for the maturity assessment and for the friction analysis for those two that were on one of the previous slides. We can do that pretty quickly and customize it. And by the way, we're 1 minute over. So thank you everybody for being able to attend tonight. We'll be in touch and we'll be sharing the PDF and the links to both videos, both afternoon and evening session. And the content is basically the same for both. And we'll also be following up with everybody for the next webinar where we'll do a deep dive into the portfolio level value stream dashboard, if you want to call it that. So thank you all for attending. And now we're just going to chill. If you guys want to hang out, if you have comments, if you have something you'd like to ask, feel free. I will be cutting this part off the video as well. So there's a portion at the beginning and a portion here at the end that won't be in the final video. So now we're on overtime, but if you want to hang out and ask questions, Hans and I are here for the next 10 or 15 minutes.